Climate Wisdom from COP30 Belém.
Welcome to our Climate Wisdom Studio, live from COP30 in Belém, in Brazil. We bring together experts from science, politics, and spirituality to explore new solutions for the unfolding climate disaster. Myself, I'm Golo Pilz, and I will be today's moderator on conscious choices for a world in transition. And indeed, the world is changing rapidly. This climate conference is purposely being organized in Belém at the brink of the Amazon. The Amazon area actually spans more than 9 countries, is a treasure trove of biodiversity, and covers more than 7 million square kilometers of area. It's also the home to 35 million people, and it's often called the green lungs of planet Earth. It plays a vital role for our planet. Latest report indicate that 35% of the Amazon rainforests are either cut or degraded. This brings the whole ecosystem to the brink of its tipping points of irreversible deforestation. Yesterday, indigenous people stormed the COP, and there was a ruffle and shuffle at the entrance and even some damage. Today, almost more than 100 ships and boats of the Climate Justice Flotilla with 5,000 indigenous activists, forest defenders, arrived at the riverbank of Belém. They will join the People Summit, which is organized at the University of Para. More than 10,000 civil society activists are expected at this COP30. They are all united in their desire to protect nature and the rights and the territory of traditional people. That's also one of the reasons Brazil is pushing for the Tropical Forest Forever facility to finance the preservation of the forests. However, on the other side, the industry, especially soya producers and oil companies, push very hard for more concessions in the Amazon forest to further exploit the forest, which is already stressed and pretty weak. I'm glad to have 2 experts with me and hope we can shed some more light on our today's topic, conscious choices for a world in transition. Today we have with us Enric Noguera, and you are the European Cities campaigner at Plant-Based Treaty. You're also aiming to reduce the number of animals exploited through our current food system and tackling environmental degradation. You have a master's degree in international law, which might become very handy in the future, and you worked also in the global animal law. Welcome to our session. Also with us today is Maureen Goodman. You are the program director for the Brahma Kumaris at the United Nations and representative at the UN in Vienna. You have been to many UN conferences and have a deep interest in spirituality and the ethical dimension of climate change. Since long, you have been involved also in the interreligious dialogue. Welcome, Maureen.
Thank you.
This brings us to our first question, Enric. Can you share a bit about the importance of a plant-based diet for our planet? Many of our viewers might be not aware what are actually really the benefits, and what brings you to the COP on behalf of the Plant-Based Treaty.
Well, thank you so much for having me. First of all, it's a pleasure to be here discussing this important topic with you. First of all, I would like to say that the plant-based diet, according to the most prominent science, is the biggest single thing that an individual can do to lower their carbon footprint. Actually, adopting a fully vegan plant-based diet, it is estimated to reduce it by actually 50% your carbon footprint. So sometimes when we deal with these big problems, individuals can feel very overwhelmed, and we feel that we don't have power to change things, but we actually have the power to change things 3-4 times every single day. And that is, for me, very encouraging. And that is a message of hope that we also want to transmit, because with every time that you see to it, you have the chance to eat and to change. And we need energy transition, we need mobility transition, but these are very complex in terms of individual perspectives. But with this one, you have the power yourself. You don't have to push governments, you don't have to push institutions, you can do that yourself. So I think this is a very important message that we convey to people. And when we think about the food systems transition, we need to understand that this is something that we can do today. It's not that complex. So that is why we think that plant-based solutions are that important and missing part of the conversation. The reason why it's important is because when we talk about the climate crisis, we usually talk about emissions. We have this carbon tunnel vision, but we forget about the planetary boundaries. Because the planetary boundaries, for those of you who are not familiar, are the 9 systems that maintain the stable Earth as it is. And animal agriculture is the most invasive industry in all these planetary boundaries, in terms of just the leading cause of biodiversity loss, leading cause of deforestation, water use, water pollution, and the biggest source of methane emissions. So it is really an ecological devastation that this industry is causing.
It's very interesting what you said. How big is actually the impact in your personal carbon footprint? 50% is massive. And if people become aware about that, I think they will start thinking really about their diet. It's an inspiration actually to change. Huh? Very, very interesting. Thanks very much for sharing. Maureen, I know you are a vegan. And in Brahma Kumaris, we follow a vegetarian diet, traditional in our organization. But you took the extra step to become a vegan. Can you share with us your personal motivation and the benefits?
Well, actually, I've been vegan since 2010, around that time. The first motivation I had was for health, actually, because I was reading about the diseases that, dairy in particular is connected with, such as cancer and so on. And I thought, why am I putting this in my body, And then I researched further, and I understood that actually, well, there's a huge amount of antibiotics in milk and other things. It's very unhealthy now. And also, the milk that's produced, that cows produce, is for the calves. It's not actually for human consumption, because the growth hormones are not suitable for us. They're suitable for the baby calves. And then I began to understand about the cruelty of the meat and dairy industry. And I said, I was already vegan, but it was like underline, underline, underline. And, we do try to educate our community as much as possible as to the importance of a vegan diet. So there's benefit for health. I feel I have a clear conscience. And I'm contributing to lessening the suffering of the animals. And like you say, just one statistic I know is that it's meat and dairy industry responsible for 60% of biodiversity loss. And there are many other statistics you will know better than me. Also, huge implications of the environment and health, climate and health, and 1 in 5 people, 1 in 5 deaths are caused by poor diet. And so all round, to adopt a plant-based diet is beneficial for the individual and beneficial for the whole planet.
So you feel better in the health?
Definitely.
And you will feel better with your mind because it's satisfying that you're on the right side.
Absolutely. Yes.
Great. Yeah. Okay. That brings me back to Enric. Eating meat is very much connected to the mindset of people. Here in Brazil, I think it's part of the culture. I walked around in all the street restaurants. I saw chickens and roasted stuff everywhere. So it's part of their culture, actually. And what's your strategy to change the mindset of people? We are here entering the domain of psychology and behavior patterns, how to sway the masses, how to bring them, how to raise them up to this point and bring change in their behavior.
So this is actually our specialization, and this is what we try to achieve from plant-based treaty. And you are very right that Brazil, same as Spain, where I'm from, is very much part of the culture, but culture changes all the time. And this is something, it's a new phenomenon, because my grandparents' generation used to eat meat like once a month or less. It was a privilege. Now we eat meat 3 times a day. So, and now this is the culture. But our regional diet, the Mediterranean diet in Spain, is very much based in grains, pulses, legumes, and vegetables and fruits. And so it is about rethinking what that culture means. And we can think about many instances outside the environment as well, where culture has changed over time and norms that were accepted years ago are not accepted anymore. And we thought that this was part of our culture, was never going to change. And today we look back and it seems unthinkable, right? So it is about moving forward. We think oftentimes as culture as a set in stone kind of thing, but it's actually quite the opposite. We progress as humans, we progress as societies, and so culture progresses with us. And so this is what we need to understand. And so from a policy perspective, what we try to do is facilitate the change, make these options easier, available, affordable, and also accessible for everybody, and make that sure that people connect, also giving out the information. It's not so much about banning anything, it's about providing an alternative perspective, providing the information, educating the public, and understanding that there is another way of doing things. And just to finalize, it is, if you think about it, it is a win-win-win situation. As you were saying, it is better for your health, it is better for the environment, and it is better for the animals. So when you work with nature, when you understand nature, nature gives back. And from a more spiritual perspective, this is exactly what we should be aiming for. And you know better than me how that actually feels. And sometimes it feels like you're giving something up, but quite the opposite. You are gaining so much more.
Exactly.
It's just a matter of understanding, like everything else.
So basically using awareness campaigns, share the information, especially also with decision makers, municipalities, cities. But there's also a little battle probably with the meat industry and the dairy industry, you know, because it's a big profitable business also.
Exactly. Yes, it is. It is. And we live in a capitalistic era where profit is above everything else. So it seems that for profit, you were just mentioning in your introduction, Brazil approved over 180 oil drilling licenses in the Amazon, 3-4 weeks before the COP.
I saw a commentator, he said, our President Lula is in a very difficult situation. And on one shoulder, there's an environmental angel city. And on the other, there is an industrial demon sitting on the other shoulder. And he is under immense pressure also from industries, also in Brazil. And they are having political influence, you know. He's not totally free to go as he probably wants, you know. So it's a bit of a dilemma, and I'm happy you share the idea, the concept of raising awareness and public campaigns, but sometimes it takes also time, you know, to change the mindset of sometimes it takes a generation also.
Yeah, indeed. But I mean, you are very right in what you said. But first of all, what we need is courageous politicians, and politicians that are in touch with the public, but also remember that we have the power. Every social movement that you have seen has been coming from the power, from the people. We see in the Indian movement of independence led by Gandhi, that was a people movement. Every social, civil rights, suffragettes, every big step that we took as a humanity has come from the people. So it is also a responsibility. It is something that it is doable.
So good. Inspirational leader.
Yeah, you're right. And I think once a wave starts, it catches on. Exactly. I mean, years ago, even being vegetarian, you were sort of estranged. Today, perfectly acceptable. Being vegan, the same. It comes up. But also, vegan food is very delicious. Yeah, that's the other thing. And I would warn against, you know, if you are vegan, having a lot of processed stuff, because that's just as harmful for your health, you know. So it's a whole new way of actually, you know, feeding consumption that's very healthy and very nice.
All right, Maureen, our topic today is conscious choices for a world in transition.
Yes.
And this implicates not only choices for our actions, but also choices for our emotions, for our feelings, and for our thoughts. And I know we spiritual people, we believe a lot in power of our thoughts. And can you explain a bit the relation of the inner and outer world, how they are interconnected, and how meditation can help us to unfold our true transformative potential, which the world probably needs?
Definitely. Yes, there is a very, very close correlation. And it's a spiritual law, actually, that whatever is within is reflected without. And so the state of the world is a reflection of the inner state of consciousness of human beings. So we see the outer, so what does that tell you about what's going on within? And the prevailing atmosphere of the world today, I'd say, is fear. And that fear leads to so many other types of actions, defensiveness, violence, etc. But actually, this is not our natural state of being. I sometimes, we actually are subject to many influences, and often we don't have the inner strength to keep our dignity in the midst of those influences, or to maintain our values in the midst of those influences. And I always like this analogy that the world, life is like an ocean. We're the boats navigating, talking about boats of flotillas today. But it's very important that the boat is in the water, but the water shouldn't come in the boat. And so we need to go inside to experience our original state of being, which is of peace, which is of love, which is of wisdom. And this is actually our real identity. So when we begin to live from the inside out, many things change. Internally you change, but you have an impact on the atmosphere around you. And so the more we do meditate and reflect and pray and are enhancing this inner world, which is our original state of being, then the more that wave will spread to have an impact on the world directly with nature, but also on our decision making, the atmosphere in the world. And the world needs the atmosphere of peace now. There's so much violence. And it is, like you said, it's in our hands. And this is something everybody can do. And we shouldn't think, and somebody told me once, if you ever think you're too small to make a difference, try sleeping with a mosquito.
Yeah. Yes. Yes.
We can all affect change.
All right, thanks very much. That's very inspirational.
Yeah.
Enric, there are two major reasons for a transition towards a plant-based diet. One is quite obviously it's helping the climate, and it helps us to feed all the 8.5 billion people on planet Earth. That's one very obvious reason. But there's also a moral aspect that animals are our companions, they're our friends, and we should actually live in harmony with them together. And the Brahma Kumaris, the organization which is hosting the studio, is rooted in India. And in India, we have this concept of ahimsa. And ahimsa means, is the ethics of non-violence in religion and in culture. Is really embedded also in society. It's a very old tradition. And how important and helpful such a moral and ethical consideration can be in your campaign. Do you see areas where we can bridge that ahimsa concept and the obvious reasons to become vegan, because that would give a lot of extra push to such a move towards veganism or plant-based diet?
Yeah, I mean, for me personally, I'm a person that I'm completely against any form of oppression or violence. And that is just what I understood, that veganism for me was just an extension of that. And it just makes sense because the way it is presented to us, it is so far detached from our choices. So when we go to the supermarket or when we go to restaurants, it is so far detached from the reality of those animals, right? And so I really want to make a point of separating veganism from plant-based diets, because plant-based diets, we look at it from more an environmental perspective, food security perspective, and veganism is more as a spiritual or ethical, you could say that. I don't like to say that. I just like to say common sense. At the end of the day, and it goes back to the saying, do unto others what you would like to do to yourself. And is that how we should treat each other? And if I want empathy and respect towards myself, the very least I could do is give it on to others. And at the end of the day, we think ourselves are so special. But I always go back to this saying from Native Americans. It goes something like, when humans have cut the last tree, they will realize that we cannot drink, eat, or breathe money. So this is why for me veganism is important. It's just an extension of what you were saying, right? And I was a very heavy meat eater back in the day, and I just one day it clicked, I switched, and I felt that always it was going to be like giving something up, and it became the opposite. I just became so much more in touch with myself, with my surroundings, much more in peace, and it's just a complete transformation. It's hard to put into words. You have not lived it, but it is definitely a big transformation in a very positive way, for sure.
I like very much when you said the spiritual decision for you is just common sense.
Yeah,
Is this a new?
it is.
It's a new thought for me also. Wonderful. So this is a very interesting sharing so far, and I think also great inspiration for our audience to consider the impact of our diet on the climate, but also understand how it influences our mindset. It has a direct impact also on our thoughts, and probably meat-based diet creates a lot of anxiety and fear also, I can imagine. So thanks very much for sharing your insights, and we just have a couple of minutes left. And Maureen, can you guide us in a meditation of inspiration and harmony and common sense?
It's common sense to become aware of who we really are and to take that journey within so that we can begin to experience our original state of inner peace. We have been influenced by so many factors externally, and we often define ourselves through what other people think of us. But who am I beyond those influences? I am a being of peace. And this brings me to a state of wholeness. Not only peace, love, happiness, wisdom are all part of my true identity. And in this awareness, I would not wish to cause suffering to any living creature. My vibrations of peace and love have an impact on my own physical body, on the atmosphere around me. So let me consciously send out vibrations of peace, loving thoughts to our world, surrounding our world with elevated vibrations, transformative vibrations. so that we move from a world of suffering to a world of love, to a flourishing world. Thank you.
Thanks, Maureen, for a very lovely meditation on common sense. And maybe you are inspired to become vegetarian, or even better, join more and more people who are going to a plant-based diet. This brings us to the end of this panel discussion, and thanks very much, Enric, for coming and sharing your insights, and thanks very much for Maureen also.
Thank you.
And thanks also very much to our patrons and sponsors and the volunteers, which are sitting all around the world and making this live studio possible. And please join us tomorrow for another interesting session on climate wisdom. For details, please visit our webpage, echo.brahmakumaris.org/life. Last not least, thanks to all of you, our audience. I hope you enjoyed this session, and goodbye, and hopefully see you tomorrow.